So just going to go through briefly a little bit of the directory structure that we have going on as a kind of an overview. So we have our source folder here, which is where we have all our source files for the app. Our index.js is our entry point, and here is where the React app gets mounted to the DOM. So this is our root element, which corresponds to our index HTML, which we have in our public folder here, which is where we have our static resources. So that root element is in our index HTML with some other goodies that come along with index HTMLs, and here is our root element. So that is how the React app gets mounted to the DOM. We have a root element here, and then the root ID in our index HTML. So continuing on in our source folder, we have some stuff that's kind of self-explanatory. We have our components folder here, which is where we have reusable components that we use throughout the app. So like we have an error component, a modal component that we use quite frequently, button component, stuff that you might get into later. Global folder, again, kind of self-explanatory. We have some global constants that are used throughout the app. So our index.js is our entry folder here, and we have a bunch of goodies in here like API endpoints, a bunch of other stuff. So if you need a constant or you need to add a constant that's used globally in the app, this is the place to do it. We have more specific constants in here, stuff like countries, broken down by language, currencies, which we use globally throughout the site. So that's where we have all of our global constants. We also have a global store. So this is our global Redux store. We also keep Redux stores contained to individual pages when appropriate, but these are Redux stores that are used globally across different pages. So like the user store is used, user information is used across the entire app. So we have that in our global store here. And then in each one of these global stores, you have stuff. Typically, you have your actions, you have your reducer, and stuff that comes along with Redux. Okay, moving on. We have our pages. So we break out our app into pages, and each one of these pages corresponds to one of the main pages in the site. Not to be confused with routes, because some routes, or better to say some pages have different routes. So like the Tablet Plus page might have like a Tablet Plus member route, or routes within one page, but these are all the main pages. So you have your accounts page, checkout page, landing page, stay list, Tablet Plus, Tablet Pro pages. And then with each one of these pages, you'll either find in this pages folder, you'll find an index.js, which is the entry level component for that page. And that is in the case, this is a simpler case. This is when there is only one route associated with that particular page, and you can find your way around by entering this component here. And each page, if applicable, will also have a components folder, which are components that are specific to that page. So moving on to a more complicated page that we have, like the checkout page, you'll notice that it doesn't have an index.js here. Instead, it has a page type. So this is kind of what I was referring to before, when not every page is associated with only one route. So the checkout page has two different page types. It has the main checkout page route, and then it also has the checkout confirmation route. So that, again, you can find those routes in app.js. Just to show you. So these are our two routes that are associated with the checkout page. So you're either looking for an index. If you go to one of these page folders, you're looking for an index.js as your entry file, or you're going to look for one of these page type folders, which will be your entry files for one of the routes that it's associated with those page, with those one of with that page. So then also, like I was mentioning, some pages have self-contained stores. So in this example, there's a lot of checkout specific data that we keep. So we keep an individual store on this page, and it has the same, each store folder has the same setup. You have actions, reducers, all the good stuff there, action types. Okay, so yeah, so just to show you the rest of them, they all should be following that same general file structure. Each page has either an index.js, it has a components folder, or if it doesn't have an index.js, it has a page type, but it should have these same folders on each page. Components, page type, store. This is a template file that was necessary for that. Components, page types. Okay, so our Redux folder, a little small folder, kind of self-explanatory here. You have the index.js, and we have two different kinds of configs, either development or production build. They're not that much different, just the development build has our Redux dev tools, and production does not. We do have a global styles folder. We don't have too many global styles, which is on purpose. We try to keep all of our styles contained to the component. So you'll find if you're making a component either at the global component level or even on like a page component level, you'll see this is a component, and each one has associated JavaScript and styles folder with it. So we really try to keep our styles contained to the particular component. Just to show an example, so each component should always have a JavaScript file and a Sass file associated with it. And we have global styles in the case that they're necessary, but for the most part they should be contained within the component. But yeah, so there's some global stuff like colors, fonts, there's a few global classes, and that's styles folder. Translations, kind of self-explanatory. This is just all the config for the translations that we use broken down by language. So we have a bunch. These are all the keys, the key value pairs for translations that we are using in the app. So if you need to add a translation, these are the files that you need to do it in. And last but not least, we have our utils folder, which has some good stuff in here. The most, probably you might at first be working in this helpers.js folder, which is just like a big file with all of our helper functions. We don't have it broken out just yet. It might be appropriate to do one day, but any helper function that you need to use throughout the app, you can just add it in this file here. We also have our request.js file, which is an important one. You probably won't have to work in this file. This is like a lot of config, so that it should make your life easier, so that you can just import the get or post or whatever HTTP verb you need to use from this file and then make a request. So most of our, like at least 90% of our AJAX calls or our posts are made in our Redux store in our actions. So just as a quick example, if we go into our user store, you'll see that we're importing a lot of these methods from the request.js file. And this is a shorthand that I'll probably go over in another video, where we have like, it's a special syntax of like an environment variable that is linked to this request.js file right here. So every time we're importing one of these verbs, it's actually referring to this method here. And it should make your life easier here. So all you have to do is get with the route, and these are parameters or headers that you want to add. We also have in here, which is pretty important, is our mock for all of our test data, or using test data on your local host to run a mock environment, which can be very helpful. So you have your mock folder in here, which has a bunch of data split out by categories. So you'll see like Tablet Plus mock data, checkout data, general mock data. So this is like a user profile response. So this is the endpoint that we hit, and this would be a typical response. And the way that that is done is that you are able to run a mock environment. So if usually for most apps you would run yarn start. We have a special command here where you can add yarn start mock API, and that's going to tell the app to not make real AJAX calls, but instead to use the mock data that we have set up. So we also have a mock request.js. So these are all of the endpoints that we have here, and anytime that in the app, if let's say you're making a request to get a user's profile and you have the mock environment running, it's going to come down here and find that endpoint and then return the mock data that you have set up in your mock data.js file here, or if, whichever one is appropriate, stays data or whatever. So you can take a look in here, but basically that's all it's doing, is it matches whatever endpoint that you have, and then it returns the mock data instead of trying to make a real AJAX call, which can be very helpful for a number of reasons, because you can control your environment, but it's also very helpful so you don't have to make one tiny little code change here and then deploy to your instance every single time. You can iterate a lot faster in your development. I think that's all that I'm going to say for the overall directory structure. See you guys in the next video.